journalist and editor Zoe Dlamini, who in 2020 had to flee from Eswatini to South Africa. And this came after he faced severe threats by government over the articles that he had published on his media publication. He now faces a legal challenge by the government in South Africa, in Mpumalanga, where the government is suing him for defamation. So this is generally a culture that we are observing that is repeated, but is emboldened by such repressive laws, which we and other organizations such as, Human Rights Watch, the African Commission last year recently called that these practices, including these legislation, have to be really reviewed.
Yeah, and it must be noted as well, Nkahiso, that Bheki Makhubu, the editor of The Nation magazine, he's also no stranger to this kind of interaction with government, right? In fact, it was in 2014 that he and another person, the late human rights defender Thulani Maseko, were jailed also in connection with separate articles that they had written. In fact, Makhubu spending more than a year in prison.
Yes, that's right. So that challenge is a challenge that that activists like Makhubu, Thulani Maseko, the Masugus, the founders and presidents of Pudemo took the government of Eswatini to court to review this piece of legislation that I've spoken about. One, on the fact that it's vague. Two, that it's overreaching. And three, that it obviously is a serious threat to not only fundamental rights in Eswatini, but it breaches international obligation. Right. Now, the issue with this act began with the definition of what it states as terrorism, which is one dangerously broad. It includes acts such as, nothing to do with terrorism, such as holding a peaceful protest or simply speaking out against the government. This broad language has often given authorities the power to label any form of dissenter as a terrorist. And this is a huge threat to civil society organizations. In reality, the law is actually not about countering terrorism. It really is about targeting freedom of expression, like freedoms of expression exercised by journalists like Makhubu, which we, as Amnesty International, call for its repeal.
I mean, the one government official has now issued a statement saying that to protect the office of the Prime Minister, government has taken a decision to redesign how the public will be informed about government business and issues of national importance going forward. What does that mean?
Again, it points out to the very arbitrary context in which freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of assembly can be exercised in Eswatini, which is one, confined, repressive, where government uses really arbitrary acts to overreach into these particular areas of, really fundamental rights. But this goes back to what we as Amnesty have consistently called for not only in Eswatini, but in SADC, that media is crucial for promoting transparency and ensuring accountability and protecting human rights. How it serves as a watchdog for exposing government abuses and informing citizens about their rights. However, in Eswatini, the media suppression has dire consequences.
Sure, and it's easy to see that in a country if you compare, South Africa, for example, where journalists have been at the forefront, for example, of unveiling issues of state capture and corruption. The risk of not having a free press, it ultimately means that there is no accountability or the accountability factor for government is greatly diminished.
Absolutely. And I mean, just look at the recent and tragic case of, human rights lawyer and defender Thulani Maseko, who one is a great, a human rights lawyer, but a critic of government. Last year he was assassinated. And despite, calls from organizations such as us, organizations within in Eswatini, the investigation to his death, into the implication to his death, the government has remained silent. That is the cost of speaking out. That's the cost of freedom of expression within such a repressive environment. And of course, South Africa stands as a beacon with its, really wide and open and protective human rights mechanisms, but also mechanisms that strengthen freedom of expression. And we hope that Eswatini could, one, copy, but also really respond by acknowledging that it has the obligations to ensure that freedom of expression and assembly is protected.
Yeah, where would we be without freedom of expression and a free press? Kagiso Mtholo, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. He's the Regional Campaign Manager for Amnesty International.